We are live on YouTube. Let me know if you guys can hear this in the comment section. This is our second time going live on OBS, testing out the new home, you could say. Come on in. Welcome to the service. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. We got some very powerful karmas today. We're going to be talking to a peace activist with Code Pink and the Peace in Ukraine Coalition. Marcy Winograd is going to be joining us in a couple of minutes. So come on in, get cozy, leave a couple of comments, say what's up, say hello in the chat. This is a community, and like I said, hit the like, hit the subscribe. Let the people know that you're here. You're here for peace activism, and you want an end to killing. How about that? End to wars. How about that? And finding peaceful resolutions. How about that? CB Applejack is already here. Oh, CB Applejack 59 says, I am here, Baba G. Thanks, CB. Appreciate you. Thanks for coming in. Yeah, like I said, this is a major peace activism. This is a rock and roll group, Code Pink, and we got some great clips of Medea Benjamin schooling some people, schooling some warmongers, and letting the people know what the truth is about this, about these endless wars, and we have some information about petitions. We have some information about what you can do to get involved, and then also we got a lot of clips. We can watch these people. I mean, she was just at some kind of Freedom Press Summit the other day, and she gets pulled off stage. Hilarious, very ironic. Great clips from there, and yeah, great service for you guys today. So I'm going to bring you on our guests in just a couple of minutes, but like I said, hit the like, hit the subscribe, leave a couple of comments, and we'll get started shortly. Thanks for coming, everyone. CV Applejack says, happy birthday, Karl Marx. Wow, thank you. Thank you for the $2 dono. We got a $2 dono already. Damn. Thanks, man. Appreciate you. Yeah. And then I think we're going to be doing another live stream. A couple of live shows I should tell you about. If you're in Toronto, I'm going to be doing... if you're in the metaverse. I'm doing a virtual show in the metaverse at Raw Dog Comedy Club. That's going to be Saturday night at 9:30. I'm going to be doing another stream on just Ukraine war stuff, and then just like silly stuff. Got some personal stuff that we got to talk about. It's been a couple of weeks since we did a live stream, but I think this is going to kick us off. I think this is the Buddha saying, "Hey, get in the game, baby. Get in the game." Especially the peace activism. I love it. So yeah, without any further ado, we're going to bring on your guests, and we're just going to get right into. We're going to get into our first video. And we'll start chatting with our guests right after that. But we just want to start the first video because it's such a banger video. I love it. It's so fun. Let's bring on. Let's take a look at it. There we go. Marcy, how's it going? Hold on. Marcy, can you hear me? Okay. Well, let me ask you to unmute. Marcy, you can hear me okay? Hold on, you have to unmute, Marcy.
Hey, here we go.
Here we go, we're here. We are live. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming. Marcy is here from the Peace in Ukraine Coalition and Code Pink. Thanks for coming. I wanted to kick us off with this video from Medea Benjamin this week. Medea Benjamin is someone that you work with, yeah?
Oh, yeah. She's my colleague at Code Pink. We co-host Code Pink Congress together, which is a terrific show. I invite everybody to join us the first and third Tuesday of the month when we talk about foreign policy and demilitarization.
Amazing. Okay, cool. No, I'm definitely going to be there. Let's take a look at this first clip just to introduce everyone, because nothing introduces like these most powerful karmas. Let's check it out.
In particular, I'm curious whether you've been able to talk.
Excuse us, we can't use this day without calling for the freedom of Julian Assange.
On World Press Freedom, it's like a World Press Freedom discussion. Amazing.
The extradition request for Julian Assange.
This is amazing.
Take it easy, take it easy, take it easy, guys.
Now, don't worry about journalist Shireen Abu Akleh, who was murdered
So,
I love how Blinken is like, take it easy, take it easy. It's a world, the whole press is here, okay? We injure her, and we're going to look like idiots right now. That's wild. But I really think, like, this is the kind of activism. I see so many people that are depressed, and they don't know what to do with themselves, and they're just trying to get rich or something, and it's like, this is fucking cool. Like, if you did something like this, you'd love yourself. You know what I'm saying?
so
Yeah, I'm jealous. I'm here in California. I wish I were in DC with Medea.
I know.
One day, yeah. I mean, Code Pink has a history of disruptions,
Yeah.
of challenge, the raging war machine.
Yeah.
We started in the run up to the U.S. invasion of Iraq in the early 2000s, and we've been going strong ever since. And today, as we'll talk about, we're challenging endless war in Ukraine. Where is this going? There is no objective in sight other than what we, kind of glean from the White House, that it is regime change. That's World War III. So we've got to put a stop to this.
Yeah, regime change is interesting because people don't realize. I think I was telling you this on the phone. Like, there's like Putin is the guy that got in charge now. Maybe he's like really badass, whatever. But there could be a psycho behind him. Like all these other military leaders that are in the country. Like they seem even worse than him.
I just want to be clear. Code Pink opposes the Russian invasion. We do not think it is justified. We are an anti-war organization. By the same token, however, we understand that the U.S. and NATO have played a provocative role. Understatement in Ukraine that the neo-conservatives like Victoria Nuland, number 3 in the Biden State Department, who was Dick Cheney's advisor during the Iraq occupation, that she and others have been pushing for a confrontation with Russia for decades. So they are responsible in many ways for bringing us to this crisis point. And we point that out when we talk about the war in Ukraine, because we think it's really important to understand that the United States has a responsibility to advocate for diplomacy, for peace, for a ceasefire, and this endless shipments of weapons to Ukraine, the latest being tanks with depleted uranium. And now we hear about these drone attacks on the Kremlin. The White House is denying, saying, we had nothing to do with this. Ukraine says, we had nothing to do with this. Well, come on. The United States has been pumping weapons into Ukraine, something like $50 billion worth. That's a money laundering operation for Lockheed Martin, for Northrop Grumman, for Raytheon, for military contractors who are reaping the profits off of this war. And wouldn't it be a lot easier just to sit down and talk and say, let's figure this out. We need to address the security interests of all stakeholders. This is not going anywhere good.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like, I guess people don't know how much behind the scenes stuff goes on too, and it's good that like we talk about it and tell people like the Americans are, and I think this is true for all wars. It's like people think that one country goes to war against another country, and I think it's actually like the conservatives and neocons, and by conservatives I do mean Democrats too now, that are in one country, like conservatives in one country, are actually the ones going to war against conservatives in another country. And then they basically are starting like pushing and pushing and pushing for years. And then when it gets rolling, they got to be like, okay, everyone's in. You got to join, or, like they do like all these sign-ups or whatever. Like you have to sign up to join the fight or whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. And on that note, I was recently watching the tape of a House committee, the House Armed Services Committee, their discussion of the war in Ukraine. And I really, Amish, I felt like I was in an episode of The Twilight Zone. I mean, these people are completely divorced from reality. And what were they saying? They were saying to the military officials who were testifying before the committee, help us out here, because we don't know what to tell our constituents. They don't get it, why it's so important that we push for World War III, Yeah. Some talking points, because they're knocking on our doors. They're banging on our doors. They don't understand why it's imperative that we expand U.S. troop presence in the Baltic states, and we continue to send more weapons to escalate the war in Ukraine. And it was ironic, because actually the representatives of the Department of Defense were more circumspect than these hawkish lawmakers who are on board for more profiteering by Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and so forth, and at great risk. I mean, we're looking at a war, a proxy war between two nuclear-armed nations. The United States and Russia, they possess 90% of the nuclear warheads on Earth. what are we doing?
Yeah, it's crazy how people think that Putin is such a maniac that he can't be negotiated with. So then you say, okay, so he's going to nuke everyone. He's like, no, he's not that. He's not going to do that. It's like, which one is it? Like, do you not think that, if you think he's so crazy that we got to go, like, is he not crazy enough to use the weapons? It's weird how before they used to have all this nuclear, there used to be a fear of nuclear war with Russia during the whole Cold War and all that stuff. Now it seems like Russia's, like, I wouldn't say they're more powerful they're more consolidated. They have a dictator in charge. I don't know if it was like that before, but it seems like there's more likelihood of using a nuke now, and yet the Americans are more violent. Like, how do you think that happened how do you think they sold that on people?
Well, they've been selling it for decades. The United States, in some ways, our Congress members are servants to the arms industry that pumps all this money into their campaigns. And we've seen since, I think it was 2004, a great expansion of NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which is no longer confined to the Atlantic. And this was a red line for Putin. I'm not saying the war is justified. It's horrific.
Yeah, of
How
course.
many million placed and killed tens of thousands? But by the same token, we know that the United States has been pushing for this confrontation with NATO expansion. Ukraine was made a de facto member of NATO several years ago because of their collaboration with us in Iraq and Afghanistan. So there are concerns. Russia has been concerned about its own survival with ABM missiles that Trump and Biden and the others are installing in Romania and Poland that could be outfitted for a first use of nuclear weapons. This is not either. I just want to say, Amish, you look at Biden's nuclear posture review. This is the policy that every president issues upon ascending to the White House. And what does it say about a first use? Biden campaigned against first use of nuclear weapons. But in this document, it says that the United States reserves the right to use nuclear weapons in a first strike should our interests be threatened. Not our interests, excuse me. Should our allies' interests be threatened?
They just leave it so vague. Allies and it's like allies and interest. I mean, interest, you could say anything. Like, you could literally be like, it's in their interest to, have a thing, push their border. I don't know, whatever. Like, I mean, the interest is such a vague term. Like, it could mean anything.
And sending depleted uranium, which is, these weapons, these tanks are suspected of causing cancer for generations to come. There's debate about that in the medical community, but we know that it's an escalatory action, and Putin has called it out as such. So what's the answer? I think instead of saying, well, this person's to blame, that person's to blame, we need to say, come on, support the calls of the peacemakers, the Pope, the Lula in Brazil.
Yeah.
Erdogan, who's, not my favorite, but he's calling for peace in Turkey. And now we have Xi in China, who's come out with a 12-point peace platform. What does Biden say about this? He dismisses it right away.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy that they just dismiss China as like, they're evil. China's just doing some other, they have an angle or whatever. But it's like, what's the American angle? The American angle of like, they've been pushing war all through the Middle East and Russia for 40, 50 years. So people get to a point where it's like, okay, well, I get that you love America, but they've just been fucking with us for 40, 50 years. China's actually nice to us. Nobody's stupid. Everyone knows that China's also bad and Russia's also bad. But if America's going to be so bad to them, at some point it's just like, okay, well, I guess I don't have any other option.
I think that we've been sold, many of us have been sold on this framing that it's democracy versus autocracy. It's really democracy. It's really autocracy versus hypocrisy. And in terms of China, let's just say this. I support the efforts by China to negotiate a peace in Ukraine, just as I supported efforts by China to successfully negotiate between Saudi Arabia and Iran. How many military bases does the United States have overseas occupying foreign lands?
I know.
700, 800? How many does China have? I don't know, a handful?
Yeah. And it's crazy that this is how all empires fall, is by overextending their empire.
I mean, if you look at the history of the Roman Empire, that was the implosion, overextending and have a near $1 trillion military budget. It's probably more than that if you count all sorts of ancillary agencies that are also supplying the war machine. But
Yeah,
This is, we are,
apparently the U.S. embassies are like CIA headquarters. Like they're kind of like covert CIA headquarters. A lot of times they're there to like overthrow governments, supply weapons, all kinds of stuff like that.
sanctions, implement sanctions. I mean, we have Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, who is Biden's chief advisor in the run-up to the Iraq invasion, and advised Biden to, who was chairing a very important Senate committee at the time, to suppress dissent on opposition to that invasion. And now this same man is the Secretary of State, head of the State Department, that is really supposed to be, I mean, theoretically, a Department of Peace, a Department of Diplomacy, but instead, it's every other day a new sanction is being issued. How many countries have we sanctioned? Something like 30 countries? And this is really another form of warfare. It's economic warfare.
Yeah, it's crazy. Do we sanction Palestine too, or is Palestine we just supply Israel with weapons and then they do it?
Well, we supply Israel with about 3.8 billion, I think, a year for Israeli Defense Forces, for their whole military apparatus that now is really just an enforcer of apartheid. And Blinken, the Secretary of State, has said, I can't count how many times the guy has said, our commitment to Israel is ironclad.
That's crazy. It's interesting how Israel now with Palestine, people are starting to see it. So I don't know if you can see, I know you're calling in from Zoom. This is our first time actually doing a guest, so thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it here at The Drip. Let me look at a couple of comments, and then I just want to talk to you about, I have the Code Pink website up, so I just want to talk to you about your history with the organization and then what you need help with right now. But real quick, I just want to get to some comments, because there's a lot of people here that are, we have a pretty anti-war crowd. I think our crowd is pretty anti-war. But I cannot find. Oh, here we go. Richard is here. CEB Applejack says free Assange now. Hands off Assange. And he also says happy birthday, Karl Marx. Thanks for the donos, Applejack. Salman Khalaf, Richard Matthews. Thank you. Let's look at this Code Pink website real quick, because it is this website. So you're with both of the organizations, Code Pink, and with the Peace in Ukraine Coalition, right?
Yes. So Amish, following the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Code Pink was the principal organizer of the Peace in Ukraine Coalition, which now represents over 100 organizations, most of them based in the United States, but a dozen or so international organizations. And our position is this: we oppose the invasion. We understand there were multiple provocations, which we do not agree with. We call for a ceasefire now. Stop. Put down the weapons. Sit down at the table. Negotiate a peace. And stop sending all these weapons to escalate the war. So we have this petition, which you're looking at right now. Yeah. Sign our End the War in Ukraine petition. And you can find it at our coalition's website, which is peaceinukraine.org. Peaceinukraine.org. So this petition basically just says, hey, Putin, Biden, Zelensky, ceasefire now and get to the table. Negotiate a peace, because there are too many risks, including the risk of nuclear annihilation, which would wipe out 5 billion of the 8 billion people on Earth, okay? And so we have this petition up, and we plan to publish it in an ad in a widely read newspaper on Capitol Hill. We are targeting May 24th for the publication of that ad. And we want to have a nationwide effort to deliver this ad to lawmakers and say, stop voting for the weapons, push for a ceasefire, issue a public statement in support of a ceasefire. We don't have one Democrat in the House or the Senate right now.
They're such losers. They suck. These Democrats are useless, and they wonder why they're going to lose the election. It's like, why do you deserve my vote or anyone's vote if you're just going to be a warmonger? You're supposed to be the anti-warmonger. The Republicans are actually against it. That's wild. It's so crazy how they flip like that.
We had 57 Republicans vote for one of the weapons bills. However, many of these Republicans, as I heard when I was listening to this hearing, want to get on. That's their target.
Yeah, you were saying that even Mearsheimer is like, no, Ukraine, stop the war in Ukraine. We got to go to China. So they just want to focus all the effort over to China.
Mearsheimer, he avoids saying, let's go to war with China, but he says we should not engage with China. We should not cooperate, even though we're facing an existential climate crisis. We should not engage with That was our mistake the last few decades after we signed the Shanghai Agreement, which recognizes one China, Taiwan being part of the one China, that we shouldn't cooperate with them, and they are our threat. They are our economic competitor, which is, that's a soft run-up to a military confrontation.
Yeah,
So
why? But they're an economic competitor, but they are also like the biggest supplier of everything that Americans need. Like, can Americans even make weapons without China? Like, don't the computer chips come from China and all this stuff? Like, how do they make their weapons without China?
Semiconductors largely come from Taiwan and China, but we have imposed a lot of sanctions on China and doing any kind of business with China. So therefore, you see lawmakers, congressional delegations going over to Taiwan. Some of them believe they want to go there because they believe that we should be prepared for war with China, which is insanity. That's a real suicide mission. Yeah. And others want to go there. We saw Congressman Ro Khanna lead a congressional delegation there, a bipartisan delegation, which was really...
Ro Khanna seems like one of the only real ones in there. Like, Ro Khanna seems like the only one with some common sense. Even when, like, a bunch of Democrats tried to sign a bill saying that they wanted just negotiations, not even to stop funding weapons, it took 24 hours and they all pulled back on it. But Ro Khanna was the one who was like, no, I think it makes sense to negotiate. I think he's the only Democrat who's saying it makes sense to just negotiate, not cut back weapons. He doesn't believe in cutting back weapons. Even Bernie Sanders, you were saying, doesn't believe in cutting back weapons, right?
Yeah. Well, on Ro Khanna for a minute, he was one of the voices that stood by that letter that was retracted within 24 hours, calling for diplomacy. However, he did lead that bipartisan congressional delegation to China and to Taiwan, rather. And China, the People's Republic of China, recognizes that as a very provocative act, given that we have 250 bases or so surrounding China, and we're conducting all sorts of military drills targeting China for a future war. I think we need our legislators to be more circumspect about their actions and the ramifications and implications. Now, in terms of Bernie, I've worked 24/7 on Bernie's campaign. I've been involved with Code Pink for the last few years. Prior to that, I'm now co-chair of the foreign policy team with Jim Carpenter of Progressive Democrats of America, co-chair of the Peace and Ukraine Coalition with Bert Noor of the Democratic Socialists of America International Committee.
Amazing.
But for a long time, I've been an activist and Amish in the Democratic Party. I ran for Congress a few times against Jane Harman, who supported the Iraq invasion and the Patriot Act and the whole list of things. And I ran as a peace candidate. So I know the Democratic Party, right? And I know that when we have a Democrat in office in the White House, others, in Congress, they don't want to challenge him. But we already see some primary challenges. We see Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is challenging Biden on his endless war policies, who's calling for negotiations with Ukraine and end to shipments. He's also anti-vax. I don't agree with that. I do agree with the anti-war position, though.
RFK Jr.? You're saying you're talking about RFK Jr.?
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
So, I wanted to clarify, I don't agree with the anti-vax message, but I do agree with his anti-war message, which is the only one that I see right now on Ukraine coming from anyone. And Marianne Williamson has, she has supported conditioning aid to Israel based on adherence to human rights, which it has not shown any respect for. But her policy on Ukraine is to support NATO and to support more weapons.
Marianne Williamson even? Well, damn. Yeah. I've heard that about her too. Yeah, Bernie Sanders and Marianne Williamson. It's crazy. Marianne Williamson teaches Course in Miracles. I don't know if you're into that, like meditation, and it's like basically like Buddhist. It's like Western Buddhism kind of. She should be a peace activist, but they do believe in it.
We welcome her.
Yeah.
I think we've had her on Code Pink Congress. She has a lot of great things to say.
She's rational though. Like she does want to support sending weapons, but it is like strategic. There is this strategic attitude of like, we send the weapons, maybe we can take him out, and then the whole thing's over. Like I get that effort. I don't think it's going to work. It doesn't make sense.
It hasn't worked. What has resulted?
Just
tens of thousands died. And people don't talk about ecocide. This war, taking place principally in eastern Ukraine, which is where ethnic Russians live and have organized a separatist movement. They wanted to leave Ukraine, many of them. They wanted to join with Russia. They turned to Russia and said, help us out here because we are at war with white nationalists who want to wipe out our culture and our language. And the latest is that I believe Ukraine has outlawed the Russian language in Ukraine. And so there's been an internal struggle that has led to this external conflict. And there are some who believe, like Nikolai Petro, who wrote about the tragedy of Ukraine, that even if this war were to end tomorrow, there would be an internal conflict between these white nationalists and the ethnic Russians in the East and in the South, in Crimea, that would endure. And this needs to be addressed.
Yeah, it does seem like a bigger mess than anyone in the Democratic Party is willing to admit. I actually want to show another clip real quick. Hold on, let me grab this one.
We need to end this war. President Biden, I hate to bother you. We need to end this war in Ukraine. We need to push for negotiations.
I hate, like, what is with these losers who go, boo, no, leave him alone. I love the president. What? Like, and then these people are going to be depressed. It's like, believe in something, you know? Like, I'm not saying you got to jump in, but at least have an attitude of, like, sick, someone's going to say something. You know what I mean? Like, someone's doing something. But do you get this a lot where you're, like, trying to speak out against the war, and then you get a bunch of people being like, no, leave them alone. I support the government. I love the government.
Well, Amish, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I will say that, I was out there. I live in Santa Barbara, Chumash Land in California. I was out there petitioning for the ceasefire petition to gather signatures for that in front of the Earth Day Festival. And people were very positive. You know, I'm glad you're here. Thank God you're an anti-war presence at this Earth Day Festival. That being said, years ago, I did participate in a disruption. And this one was in Los Angeles. Nancy Pelosi came to promote her book. And it was during the Bush era.
Yeah.
She the impeachment and briefed on the use of torture, the waterboarding, the stress positions, and had not spoken out. And so a number of us who were involved with Code Pink or supporting Code Pink at the time, we went to hear her speak, and we bought her book. She was promoting a book at the time, and we wrote in the book in big black markers, torture, question mark, complicity, question mark, things like that. And we held them up during the walk. It completely unnerved her. They started dragging us out. I was able to stay. They told Jody Evans, who was our co-founder of Code Pink, you must leave.
Wow.
And another man who challenged Pelosi, who got up and disrupted, he was dragged out, So I have had some fun with this over the years. But in general, people are looking for answers right now. They don't want to see this escalate. This war in Ukraine.
Well, you were saying that you were at the Earth Day thing. I thought it was really funny actually that you were there at it was like a peace movement thing, and Jane Fonda was there, and she didn't even say hi.
Well, first let's say this, that I'm a big fan of Jane Fonda. She's 85.
Same, I love Jane Fonda. I think she's so cool.
We love Jane Fonda.
We love Jane Fonda.
I remember when she was in. I don't know if I'm allowed to say a swear word on the word a curse word.
You can say it.
You can say.
Yeah.
She was in a group called Fuck the Army during the Vietnam War, and they toured. There you go, with Donald Sutherland and Holly Near.
This is amazing.
They toured against the war, and they were a response to Bob Hope, a comedian at the time who was with the USO tour and a pro-war tour. And so what they did was just phenomenal.
Yeah, this is great stuff.
Iraq war. She paid a price though for her opposition.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say because it's true. Y'all had a sign there. She did a speech. Doesn't even look at you. Doesn't even acknowledge you because she has been shamed out of it. And this does happen to a lot of people, right? Like they get shamed out of being peace activists by other Democrats. I
have to be honest with you. I don't know if my first inclination was to think that she is still feeling the blowback from a pose she did on an anti-aircraft gun of North Vietnamese, and she was vilified for that, despite all the good work that she had done to oppose the war. If it's that, or if it's that she actually agrees, she may actually agree that we should be. There is that. There are some people who just agree with it. Like there are left-wing voices who are like, I think it's a good idea, kind of thing. Oh yeah, I mean, there's division within the left community. And that's, we can't write them off. We have to reach out to them. We should be standing together for planet survival, if nothing else, right? So our Peace in Ukraine Coalition is very aware of that. We have, I just want to invite people in. It's peaceinukraine.org. You can sign up, become a member. We're organizing working groups. I'm co-chairing with Dave Molinex in Hawaii, our media advisory working group. It's really exciting. We're going to have a speakers bureau. It will be up soon on our website. We want to reach out to colleges. If you have a connection with a college, please email me, Marcy, M-A-R-C-Y, at codepink.org. Marcy at codepink.org. We want to push out our speakers bureau. Amish, you're on it. You're in it.
Yes.
To media, put them on these talk shows as guests. We want to bring them to colleges via Zoom or in person. We need to amplify our message, but to do that, we need to grow our movement. People look around and go, I don't know what to do. This is scary. This is scary. But what do? Join our coalition. Let's get organized. Help us. We need you.
Yeah. So tell me where you got started. Did you get started? Not the Vietnam War. I know Medea Benjamin started with Vietnam. I heard her talk about that. You started.
Well, I did as well. I was in high school at the time.
I didn't want to age you. I was like, oh, you started with the Iraq War, but no, it was actually you actually started in Vietnam War, right?
Yeah, I was in Vietnam War.
That's so important.
And I woke up. I remember my father. He was really vehemently opposed to that. He didn't believe in the domino theory that one country, the next country would fall and so forth.
That's so crazy. I got to find that clip.
He was yelling at my sister's boyfriend at the time, who wanted to enlist. He never did. But at the time, I marched with my father and my mother and my brother in opposition to the Vietnam War. There were moratoriums and marches in San Francisco, Los Angeles. Left high school for a day to participate in a teach-in. Met Ron Kovic. He's one of my heroes. Born on the 4th of July was his book. A movie was made about his time in Vietnam as a Marine. He's now in a wheelchair as a result of his time there, and he is the most articulate voice against war that I can think of. I met him. I was profoundly moved, and I got involved with the Vietnam War movement. I volunteered on the defense committee for Daniel Ellsberg and Tony Russo, the Pentagon Papers trial. I was distributing the Pentagon Papers newspaper throughout Los Angeles. I did research in the bowels of the LA library at the time to find evidence that the classified information that Ellsberg, who is now terminally ill, God bless him, that he released to the Times, the Washington Post, in the newspaper. So I did a lot of that research as well. And I did jury selection, where we drove around looking at potential jurors' homes to see if they had any bumper stickers on their cars, if we wanted them on the jury or not. Ultimately, that there was that the charges were dropped because of government collusion in breaking into Ellsberg's psychiatrist's office, and the judge was clearly not impartial.
Whoa, so someone broke into his office?
Oh yeah, they broke into Ellsberg's psychiatrist's office to collect his files. There were all sorts of shenanigans going on at the time, but to his credit, Ellsberg, one of the greatest whistleblowers in U.S. history, has been an advocate for nuclear disarmament, for peace, ever since then. And we all need to honor him. We're asking Code Pink, Diffuse Nuclear War, Roots Action, Progressive Democrats of America. We're asking cities to commemorate Daniel Ellsberg. What does he have? A few months left. He's got cancer. He needs to be commended. Let's name bridges, streets, cities.
Ellsberg. Let's watch this a quick clip from him. This is from Democracy Now!
In his 2017 book, The Doomsday Machine, Confessions of a Nuclear War Planner, he is featured in a new short animated video produced by Roots Action about the threat of nuclear annihilation.
Since the end of the Cold War, people have been focused on the possibility of a terrorist nuclear attack or an accident or some rogue nation using nuclear weapons. They are not focused and worried about the possibility of an all-out nuclear war between the U.S. and Russia. With the end of the Cold War, people really haven't thought about that very much. Those who do follow it, they know it would be catastrophic, that the chance of an all-out war, the use of most of our missiles, strategic bombers on both sides, is possible. It is not zero possibility, and it's not near zero possibility. We have 400 missiles on 10-minute alert From getting an authenticated command to the time that the missiles are actually launched from their silos, it's a matter of minutes. Those missiles, of course, cannot be recalled. In about 30 minutes, they would land at their targets, largely in Russia and China. Since the mid-60s, the Russians, the Soviets, acquired sub-launched missiles, which our ICBMs could not target, and which assured that whether we went first or second, the Soviets had the ability to demolish our society, just as we had the ability to demolish theirs.
How come nobody knows
From
about
that
this?
time on, the vulnerability of the ICBMs made them extremely dangerous for us to possess, and we should have eliminated them.
And what's really,
Yep.
what's really criminal, Amish, is that Congress is fully on board to replace these 400 ICBM missiles in underground silos in the Midwest with 600 new warheads called the ground-based strategic deterrent. You know,
That's
they call
wild.
it nuclearization. I call that a euphemism. It's nuclear rearmament, and it's in violation of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty that the U.S. is a signatory to.
Yeah, that's wild.
People need to be banging on the doors of their Congress members.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
are
I
you
mean,
doing?
I mean, it's wild that like I don't think people just even know that like it's they can hit us. People just think Russia is completely useless and they'll never be able to hit us. But
Since the mid-60s, the Russians, the Soviets, acquired sub-launched missiles, which our ICBMs could not target, and which assured...
yeah, like they can target. So is the new 600 that they want? Can it counteract this even, or is it still like the Russians can just hit first or second? I wonder.
No, Ellsberg calls for the complete dismantlement of these ICBM missiles in the Midwest. They're on hair trigger will be launched within 10 minutes. You know, and whether it be by accident or by intention, it's, you know, even Biden himself says it's the beginning, or it is nuclear Armageddon. This is real. The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, a group of disarmament advocates, they have a doomsday clock. That's a metaphor for how close we are to nuclear annihilation, to omnicide, that's global death. And they put it at 90 seconds to midnight, closer than we have ever been before because of this proxy war in Ukraine. So people who say we've got to fight to the last Ukrainian, actually what you're saying is we've got to fight to the last human being on Earth.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a nuclear war. I mean, I don't know why I guess people just don't care about nuclear war anymore. It was hot in the 80s. 80s, they had all the scare videos of how bad it could be. And I don't think people care. People just think nuclear, like, oh yeah, it's just a really big bomb or whatever. They don't see that it's going to be the end of the world, basically. And that Russians can counterstrike. Because the Russians have an automatic counterstrike.
Yeah, I mean, we at Code Pink, we support the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons.
Yeah.
This has been signed by, I don't know, over 80 countries. It basically outlaws internationally the development, the distribution, the deployment of nuclear weapons, the design of nuclear weapons. We need nuclear-free zones in every city of the United States.
Yeah, for sure.
Prohibit transport, prohibiting the research in our cities on these nuclear weapons. Because this nuclear rearmament program, which they euphemistically call nuclear modernization, it will cost nearly $2 trillion over the next few decades. Meanwhile, we have millions of people who don't have access to clean water, who live paycheck to paycheck, schools that need new infrastructure, people who are houseless, living on the street, and here we are, lining the pockets of Northrop Grumman, who has the sole source contract to build these new nuclear weapons.
Only one company can build the nuclear weapons.
Well, it subcontracts to all their friends in the for-profit weapons industry, but they've got this.
There's basically only 4 companies that know how to do it.
Well, I don't know if there are 4 or 5 or 6, but Northrop Grumman has the sole source contract. It was Obama who approved of this nuclear rearmament program. And, you know, I've read that it was part of the deal he made with senators to pass the START Treaty, which was an arms control treaty that is now in an abyss due to the war in Ukraine and the arming of the Ukrainians and so forth, that Russia has suspended its participation in START, which Biden reaffirmed once he ascended to office, once he was elected. Keep in mind that Trump walked away from START. I mean, he wasn't going to renew it.
Yeah,
Trump
yeah.
walked away two strategic arms control treaties with Russia. So anybody who thinks that Trump was a peacemaker, no.
No way.
No.
And not with Russia. Like he was fighting. He was very violent. Actually, he actually escalated the nuclear fight with Russia. I'd say he made it worse. Like he walked away from treaties.
By walking away from a treaty that really limited the nuclear weapons that either side could possess. And, and he was the one who sent lethal weapons over to Ukraine. Now, granted, he was under a lot of pressure because of this conversation he had with the leader of Ukraine about, hey, Hunter Biden, and we want you to come out and make all sorts of statements. And so as a result of the pressure and blowback from that, he did support sending all these lethal weapons to Ukraine to undermine the Minsk peace accord that was signed in 2015 and said, we're going to have elections in the Donbass in the east so that the ethnic Russians will have some sense of self-determination there. Well, that never happened. Instead, What did we do? Trump started sending weapons. Biden continues. Congress is all on board to send more weapons to Ukraine. And even before the Russian invasion, which was one of the provocations. You undermine a peace accord. You had Angela Merkel, head of Germany, saying, we never meant that accord, that peace accord. That was just to buy time. Buy time for what? To send weapons? To push for a proxy war?
Training, too. They did training. And
Russia? Yeah. There's so much that the U.S. public, I try to avoid the word American because, hey, there's Central America, there's South America. We are the United States of America. So there's so much that the U.S. public doesn't know because our corporate media is now really, they're just Pentagon flags.
I know.
That's all.
It's crazy that Tucker... Sorry, say that again?
I said they're stenographers for the Department of Defense.
100%.
CBS, MSNBC, CNN, the Washington Post, the New York Times, they're taking their talking points from the Pentagon.
Yeah, and I feel like Tucker Carlson basically just got fired because they keep trying to say that it's because of some religious fundamentalism or whatever, but that's all stuff that Fox News loves. All the religious fundamentalism, all of the racist stuff that he says, you have to actually do that to get on Fox. The thing that I feel like was like the step too far for Fox News was that he criticized the war, and now there's going to be no anti-war voice on television.
Well, this is one of the sad aspects of this story. I mean, Tucker Carlson, I'm not a Tucker Carlson fan, and I certainly don't approve of his promulgation of the big lie that Biden stole the election. It was ridiculous. Or his misogyny is reported by his staffers, one of whom is suing Fox over this. But
the thing is, they've never, that staffer has never talked to, like, they've never seen each other face to face.
Right. But in terms of Ukraine, I just saw cable television, I watch it now and then, a conversation where the pundits were scratching their heads and they were saying, gee, we just can't figure this out. It's no secret that he was a misogynist. It's no secret he was a racist. It's no secret he was promoting the big lie. Okay, so Fox settled this lawsuit with Dominion, the electronic voting machine company, for almost $1 billion over the promotion of the big lie, which Carlson was very much part of. But there must be a missing piece here. Gee, what's the missing piece that convinced Murdoch, the Murdoch family that owns Fox, to fire Tucker Carlson? Maybe the missing piece that he was a voice for a ceasefire and diplomacy in Ukraine.
Yeah, he was the only one. And you talk about the Dominion voting machines. He actually was the one person on Fox who pushed back even against the Dominion voting machines. So it could be that he actually didn't believe it. He was saying, like, there's no proof that this election was stolen. It's crazy that Trump even likes him still, because he has those text messages saying, I think Trump's terrible for the country. He's a terrible guy. I hate talking about him. Why are we all talking about him? They're still friends. But he also, on the Dominion voting machines, he was the one guy who actually was against like that narrative that the Dominion voting machines were rigged or whatever. He was the only one who said that on Fox News.
I have to be honest, I didn't watch Tucker Carlson very often.
Right.
I'll take word for it, but I know a lot of people do assign blame to him for promoting the big lie. What's going to happen to Trump and Tucker Carlson, and why is Trump being nice to him? I have no idea, but politics is often an alliance, a temporary alliance. It's a transactional affair. Yeah. So perhaps Tucker Carlson can serve him.
No, it's so transactional. I'm just gonna read a couple of comments here. CB Applejack59 gives $5. Says, "Can we stop saying China and Russia bad with our history? Putin been in power so long. Putin been in power so long. Germany's Angela Merkel says he's been in power since 2005. Cool. Ro Khanna is a clown as well. Applejack, you got to tell me why Ro Khanna is a clown. He seems like the only one. Also, more donos from Applejack. He says, free Assange now, hands off Assange. Cool. And thanks everyone else for coming. Appreciate you in the comments. We got a pretty anti-war. Christopher Edwards Bailey says, great podcast. Thank you, Christopher. Appreciate you. Chipco, thanks for coming. We got the anti-war crowd today, because so usually we get some people who are like, no, we gotta fight. What are you guys on Putin's side? Or someone will just come in and say Putin's bad. You have to say Putin's bad every 2 minutes, or else, it doesn't look right or whatever.
I do want to echo the call to free Julian Assange. I was so proud of my Code Pink sister, Medea Benjamin, who was disrupting and sponsored by the Washington Post, highlighting Secretary of State Antony Blinken and pushing for freedom for Julian Assange, who's been incarcerated for far too long years.
Let's watch that clip again. It's so good.
He's a journalist.
He is a journalist, and I can't believe these losers, and I can't believe how many just on the street Democrat, I'm in Canada, so I know Democrats, meaning like people that just support the party, and they're like, well, he gave away the secrets. It's like, you're not getting paid, idiot. These idiots are going to get rich selling a war, putting people like him in jail. And then there's just people on the street that I know that are like, well, that's what they said. It's the same thing as like if you're in the crowd and you're like, no, let them talk. I want the people in the suits to talk. It's like, no, at least something cool happened today. You know what I mean? Like, that's the attitude you should have, I feel like. Let's watch this. This is so good.
The extradition request.
2 hours and not one word. Take it easy. Take it easy, guys.
Not one word about journalist Shireen Abu Akleh, who was murdered by the Israeli occupation forces in Palestine. One word about journalists.
We're here to celebrate freedom of expression, and we just experienced it. Let me continue.
Did you? You just pulled him off the stage. You didn't enjoy it. We just saw you suppressing freedom of expression. You're not talking about the real story. And if someone else brings it up, you're pulling them off. I mean, I get it, like they're interrupting or whatever, but it's like they have to interrupt because you idiots won't talk about it. It's so fake, man. I can't believe these people.
It's a farce.
Yeah.
I will say this, that the Washington Post did publish a story about the Justice Department, the Department of Justice, prosecuting the African Socialist Party in the United States. Why? Because they are accused of being a mouthpiece for Putin.
For Putin. So ridiculous. What? Yeah, that's another thing that Tucker Carlson got in trouble for, because he did mention, Tucker Carlson actually mentioned those guys too, the black socialists. He's like, I don't agree with them. Obviously, I'm not a socialist. They're black socialists. But why are they being accused of some kind of Russian collusion? It's crazy. And their houses were raided and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, it is interesting to see so many people quiet about this. One of the things that I think we can learn from you, though, is that you said you started with the Vietnam War, because right now we're a year into this Ukraine war, I'd say, but a little over a year. Most people on the ground, like I said, are being sheeps. Most people are on the ground are very well, no, you got it. They know what's best, and you got to follow what they say or whatever. The people in the suits are the people in charge, and they must know what to do or whatever it is. And even the idea of ignoring stuff like the Nord Stream pipeline, there's so many people that are like, oh, well, the Russians could have done it. And it's like, no, you're not getting paid. You're not a spy. Why are you talking like you're some kind of spy? Just talk with your common sense and say what you really think. You can't really think that Putin destroyed his own pipeline. It's ridiculous. It's obviously an American job or whatever. Even if there's not 100% evidence for it, there is evidence of a cover-up. and that sort of thing. But the point that I wanted to get to is like, so many people that it's like you're not even getting paid are supporting this war. And you started with the Vietnam War, you said, and I think you were telling me before we got on the call that when the Vietnam War started, nobody supported the anti-war movement then either, and it took like 5-6 years. So do you think that that we have that chance here, or do you think that the media and the military powers are getting better at covering up? Because it does seem like Vietnam was heavily opposed, and we all just know it was wrong. And then it looks like Iraq, it feels a little bit like I'm getting like 70-30 on it from people, whereas 70% of people are like, yeah, that was a waste of time, that was stupid. 30% of people are coming around on Iraq war and even saying, well, you know, what do you want, Saddam Hussein to be in power? He's evil, so that's good. And now Ukraine, it just seems like everyone wants to go to be at war with Ukraine. Maybe I'm being cynical. Are they getting better at it, or am I just at the early stages of this, and by the end of the war, we're all going to be on the same team?
I think as time drags on and we see more and more money being funneled into endless weapons and propping up the government in Ukraine to the tune of $6 billion a month now, because we're paying government pensions and so forth as we try to privatize Ukraine, and that's a whole other subject. I think people are going to get tired of it, you know, particularly as they see their standard of living decline. They're struggling. People in this country, you know, as I said, they're living paycheck to paycheck. And I believe that with time, people will come around. I'm already seeing that, Amish. You know, as I mentioned, I am out there petitioning in my local community. I feel I can't ask people to do something in their community if I'm not doing it, right?
Yeah.
So in addition to working nationally with Code Pink and the Peace in Ukraine Coalition, we have formed a Code Pink chapter in Santa Barbara, Central Coast Anti-War Coalition, and we're out there petitioning for a ceasefire. And as I said, you know, people are more open to it now. I already see a shift. There's a shift. And the polls are showing a shift too. I mean, less than half of the country supports sending more weapons to Ukraine.
Wow. Less than half, eh? That's interesting. That's good.
I think 48% support.
That's progress. It does, actually, I gotta say, like, the gung-ho-ness on Ukraine it is waning a little bit, because people thought it would be so easy. Initially, people were sold this, like, we'll just go in, we'll get rid of Putin, and it'll be quick, easy peasy, we'll be in and out. And now they're seeing more and more money. So it's you know, there's activism, and then there's also this, like, oh, it's too hard now. Like, there does seem to be that thing where it's like, oh, well, it's not easy. It's still going on. I don't know. Let's go to China or whatever, you know, like, they just want to move on. They just want it quick. I mean, Americans want to win. And if it looks like they can't even admit any little losses or anything. So it's like, as the losses build up, I think people are slowly losing interest, actually. It's too bad, though, because it causes people dying to lose interest.
We lost in Vietnam. We lost in Iraq. We lost in Afghanistan. What makes people think that war is the answer in Ukraine?
Yeah.
It's not.
It's not.
And, you know, there are issues that have to be dealt with. The autonomy for the Donbass, Crimea, neutrality, no membership in NATO for Ukraine, although now, you know, if the United States has been encouraging Ukraine to join NATO since before the Russian invasion. In fact, both Blinken, our Secretary of State, and Biden signed strategic partnerships with their counterparts in Ukraine. This was about 3-4 months before the invasion, to say, we want to help you privatize Ukraine, okay? And we encourage you to pursue taking back Crimea.
Yeah.
Now, people say that all the time. Oh, Russia annexed Crimea. You know, there are different ways to view that. Was it an annexation? Was it a reunification? Crimea was part of Russia for 200 years. Khrushchev, when he was in power in Russia, he unilaterally basically turned Crimea over to Ukrainian administrative control when Ukraine was still the Soviet Union. 97% of those in Crimea voted to join the Russian Federation. I don't think one shot was fired when Russian troops moved into Crimea 2 weeks after the United States supported the 2014 coup in Ukraine that overthrew a democratically elected president. And Victoria Nuland, now in our State Department, engineered a transition government. So we got to deal with Crimea. We have to deal with the Donbass. We've got to negotiate for NATO and other topic.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
NATO, the largest institutional opponent to the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. So if you are supporting NATO, you are supporting nuclear proliferation, which endangers the survival of the planet.
It's crazy. These military guys, people think that they're military people. They're basically like, and I'm not saying soldiers themselves, soldiers can be obviously good people. I think a lot of them are being taken advantage of too. But the people at the top in the military, they're assholes basically. Like they're not, like they want to fight. And even with you, when you give them any kind of power, they're going to fight with you. Like we're seeing the Pentagon is basically not telling where they spend the money. I mean, it's basically corruption. It's been like trillions of dollars lost in the Pentagon. They just can't explain it. If you ask them if it's corruption even, they're like, no, you're not allowed to call it corruption. It's not waste, fraud, and abuse. It's just, we got to figure out where the money went, and it's an issue that we're working on, and that's it. It's like, it's such a bullying that you're getting from them, and people don't realize that, like, that's what they are. Like, I mean, they're basically bullies. They want to go to a fight, and they want to force you to fight with them. I have a couple of questions. Sorry, go ahead.
Head of the defense now is a former board member of Raytheon.
That's so sad.
One of the contractors. So, but you know, I want to be hopeful. I want to encourage people to take action because cynicism is disempowering.
Yeah.
So I invite you into Code Pink. Visit us at codepink.org. I invite you into the Peace in Ukraine Coalition, peaceinukraine.org. We're revving up with all sorts of working groups, organizing, research, resources, media. There you go. And we want to support Medea Benjamin, the co-founder of Code Pink, and Nicholas J.S. Davies, her co-author of the book, War in Ukraine, Making Sense of a Senseless Conflict. She's touring the country. You can read all about it. Just Google Ukraine, Code Pink, and you'll see her book. We also have a video that's based on her book. It's 18 minutes. You can have a little house party.
Great video.
Over, talk about it. Watch it. Yeah.
Yeah. We just had one question I wanted to answer from and it goes along with what you're saying right now, where you're basically saying like we don't want to get cynical about it. We want to just keep on bringing up the hypocrisy of it, bringing up like the things that don't make sense. One of the questions we got here actually in our comments was by Richard Matthews. So what's the solution to ending the war? So what would you say, like joining you guys as well, or like what would you say is the solution to bringing an end to it?
You know, there are different levels to that answer, but the ultimate solution is to negotiate a peace agreement. You know, to sit down at the table. We should be pushing for all stakeholders to be at that table to negotiate what's going to happen to Eastern Ukraine, what's going to happen to Crimea, and what's going to happen with Ukraine and NATO. So those are the three issues that have to be negotiated. And the war is not going to end by funneling more weapons into Ukraine, right? That we'll just see more death, more destruction, more ecocide. 50 to 100,000 black dolphins have washed up dead.
That's insane. I can't. So say that again. 50 to 150,000 dolphins have died.
50,000 dolphins.
That's a genocide. You know, that's a genocide. That really is.
That is, and that is because they believe it's because of the explosions from weapon systems that are being sent by the United States that Ukraine has, as well as Russia. You know, dolphins don't like a lot of noise. It's deafening and it's lethal for them. So. War is not the answer. Negotiate. You know, wars end in negotiations. That's how wars end. So let's go there. Let's get to the table and oppose the continuation. Now, how do we get to the table? How do we get our lawmakers to listen to them? Well, we have to organize. And we need labor involved, too. You know, we need to organize labor. We need people to withhold their labor at the ports, to refuse to send these weapons to Ukraine. Labor, ground transport, could bring this nation to a halt. And if people don't think it's that important right now, it is. It's a matter of planetary survival. And if this war ends, the warmongers in Congress and the White House, they have their eyes on China. You know? Yeah. So we need to be involved. And to do that, organize it with us at codepink.org, peaceinukraine.org. be visible, right?
Yeah.
We've got banners. You can download them. We've got posters. Call for primary challengers on every side of the, there we are. That's the banner that I held up when Jane Fonda spoke at the park, and there's Kent State during the Vietnam War.
This is amazing. This is a Code Pink Twitter page. Make sure you follow Code Pink. There's a link to that and a link to I think everything in the comment section below, but this is incredible. I was just scrolling through this today. This is fantastic. This is great. Like this Kent State University, what happened there, where people were organizing and they were basically like beat up by the cops from the footage I've seen.
4 people were killed that day.
Oh my God. Yeah, for protesting the war. So it just goes to show like these people are not playing around with this. This is amazing.
Okay. This is Leonardo Flores. He was also with Code Pink for years, and he's a Latin American political analyst, and he's challenging Juan Guaido, who was invited to speak, and he was named president of Venezuela by the White House, not by the people of Venezuela.
Wow.
This was to overturn socialism in Venezuela. So Leonardo, he's being dragged out now. He's saying liar, liar, and he's being dragged out.
This is amazing. Let's watch this. I can't believe this woman is just covering her ears. It's like, you losers.
Juan Guaido's a traitor. He's a thief. Liar. He needs to go back to Venezuela to face justice. It's been 3 years since Operation D. Liar.
Who are these people yelling liar? I mean, I hope they're on his side. If they're on his side, because because there's so many people that are against these protesters. It's like, at least then you're going to be depressed. You know what I mean? Then you're going to wonder why your life has no meaning. Join something like this. This is cool, man. This is like such a fun, cool thing to do. This is what we all romanticize about the 70s. People believed in things. They went out. They did activism. They fought for what they believed in. Now it's almost like people are dead inside. They'll sit there and be like, stop. No, let the guy in the suit say what they want. And then they wonder why they're depressed and they're in a loveless marriage. Of course you are. This is you're selling yourself out. And your spirit doesn't like that.
That's right. So speak up. Stand up. Shout.
Yeah. Thanks for coming in. I'll make sure. What's that? Sorry.
Just be vocal. Be visible.
Yeah.
War is not the answer.
Think for yourself. Yeah, war is not the answer. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it. And I'll make sure I include links to everything in the comments.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Amish. And thank you to your audience. It's a great honor to be with you all today.
Amazing.
Visit us.
Yes.
CodePink, EasternUkraine.org. See you there.
Amazing. Thanks. All right. That is our stream. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Make sure you hit the like, hit the subscribe, and I'll be back. I might be back in a couple hours just to do some silly stuff and to do some stuff about... I still have some topics I want to talk about with Ukraine. I just have to run right now, but I'll be back in an hour or two, and we'll do another stream, and... we'll hang out. Thanks everyone for making donations and leaving your comments in the comment section. Really appreciate that.